Welcome once again. I'm Brian LaPasse, Chief of Program Services for OPSC. With me today is Tracy Sharp, Operations Manager in Program Services, and Michael Watanabe is also here with us today. We'll be facilitating today's meeting and helping out with questions and answers after the presentation. First on the agenda, we have Casey Barr, who will be discussing the most recent updates to the small school district program. This is quite the program. There's a lot of nuances. And that's why this is the fifth time that we're discussing it in this venue. We'll see how it goes today. It may or may not be ready for state allocation board after today's meeting. We'll have to see. We're excited to get into that next phase of it becoming an operating program, but we want to make sure that it's completely ironed out before we take that next step. So we'll see how it goes today. There's not a whole lot of changes since last time. Casey's going to be reviewing the feedback that we received from the meeting that we had back in September. And then we're going to be looking at changes that we've made since that last meeting related to when new construction eligibility must or can or can't be updated, can or not have to be updated, when the programs will actually open, when the funding rounds will open for the new construction and modernization carve outs, and then some updates of the nuances that will be related to how the processing is going to work. And then also how we're going to be handling duplicate applications that might be on the workload list or on the applications received beyond bond authority list that share the same scope of work that you're going to be applying for in the small school district program. So we've been carefully listening to all of the suggestions and feedback that we've received, and I think you'll see quite a lot of that reflected today. So we're looking forward to kind of maybe wrapping that program up as far as this process goes, but we'll see. Second on the agenda today, Kelsey Muramoto is going to be presenting changes we're making to all of our regulations and forms for the incorporation of transitional kindergarten as its own grade level. We did not receive any feedback from the last time we talked about this topic in September. So today's item covers the topic one more time, just to make sure that everyone has a good opportunity to digest the material once again and see everything. Kelsey's going to review where we've made changes to align with proposals we have related to this topic from both our regulations and forms. There's a whole lot of mentions of TK that we had to add or change. So that's another reason to bring this topic forward again. We needed to make a lot of changes to our regs and forms to incorporate the term TK. So we've also provided some previews of what those forms will look like if they're approved the way that we're proposing them. But all in all, today's item for this topic is pretty straightforward. It doesn't make any major changes from what's been presented previously, but we did get just a lot further in kind of completing the development of the change and all the resulting regulation and form changes that we needed to make. Thank you for being here again today and spending your valuable time with us. Remember to use the Q&A function in the Zoom and raise your hand in between presentations if you'd like to ask them verbally. Just a reminder, too, that we'll also be posting this to our OPSC YouTube channel, which is OPSC YOU. So if you're watching this after the live meeting here today, you have an opportunity to send in any questions or comments you might have as well for the next couple weeks. We're coming up on the holiday season, so if those comments are a little bit delayed, that's probably okay. But if you can get them to us sooner than later, we'll be able to make sure that we're addressing any concerns or comments that you have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Casey.
All right, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Again, my name is Casey Barr, and today I'm going to be continuing the discussion for the creation of the small school district program, which for purposes of our presentation, I'll just refer to as program throughout this presentation since it's a longer term, and proposed regulatory amendments in the form 5012 changes since the last presentation as well. So just for a quick overview of what this presentation will comprise of, we're just going to go through stakeholder feedback received since the last presentation, which was back on September 18th this year. After that, we're going to go ahead and review some new and amended proposed regulations that are going to expand on those that were previously presented And then we'll take a look at some of the changes to the application for the Small School District Program Preliminary Apportionment, or Form SAB 5012. So before we get started, I just wanted to highlight on something before we get going. So on page 2 of the cover for this item, we wanted to make sure that you're all aware that county offices of education are included in the definition of small school district and are therefore eligible to participate in the program. Throughout the presentation, I'll be referring to school districts or districts, and just wanted to note that county offices of education are included within this. So with this in mind, we have updated the dollar amounts for the total applications received on the workload and applications received on the applications received beyond bond authority lists for currently received small school district requests. So you can see that here on page 2. As of October 31st, there are approximately 78 new construction applications from small school districts requesting approximately $165.9 million in state funding on the workload list. As far as modernization applications, there are a total of 77 requesting a total of approximately $136 million on the workload list, and 89 applications requesting approximately $110.3 million in state funding on the applications received beyond bond authority list. So as Brian mentioned, this is the 5th time that we are presenting for the development of this program. And he already pitched our OPSC YouTube page, so I won't belabor the point there. But if you do have any interest in seeing the development of the program from the start up, definitely recommend going ahead and checking that out on our YouTube page. That being said, we'll go ahead and move on to page 3 of our cover here, where we'll go ahead and dive into the stakeholder feedback that we received since our previous presentation. All right, so looking at stakeholder feedback number 1, this one begins with a couple stakeholders who expressed concerns related to the prior proposal at the September stakeholder meeting to begin accepting applications for the program in November of 2026. These concerns are outlined in detail on pages 3, and the stakeholder feedback in full can also be found on attachment C of this item. So in short, some stakeholders wanted the opening dates to occur sooner, and some wanted it later. For varying reasons. And our response is that the intention of accepting program applications in November 2026 is to provide adequate time for our office to conduct thoughtful, comprehensive outreach to prospective program applicants, as well as time for regulations and forms to be finalized and effective. We intend to provide all eligible small school districts an equal opportunity to apply for program funds through the means of outreach and this hands-on approach to planning for the submittal of applications. So the proposed November 2026 date also provides districts more planning time to consult their governing boards and communities, as well as to establish or update program eligibility. This will result in as many small school districts having the opportunity to apply for the program and have a chance to obtain funding for their projects. So in addition, in response to the recommendations stakeholders provided pertaining to timeframes for processing applications in this feedback, we've also updated the proposed regulations to clarify that these applications will be processed and prioritized in the order of the date they were received. So in the event the number of applications submitted on the same date exceed that which can be funded with available resources, we've updated the regulations to reflect how these applications will be prioritized. More to come on this when we review stakeholder feedback number 4 pertaining that. So moving toward page number 4, related to another component of this feedback is that there's a concern that a large volume of applications may overwhelm state agencies and add processing delays. So to that, we just wanted to note that we do administer existing programs, such as for preliminary charter school apportionments that do operate on a filing round basis that often result in a large number of applications submitted in a short time frame. As it relates to this new program, districts can request and receive a preliminary program apportionment prior to preparing project plans and receiving California Department of Education or Division of the State Architect approvals. Additionally, districts have up to 5 years to complete these requirements. So the existing program suggests that applicants with preliminary apportionments often meet these requirements on different timelines within the maximum 5-year period, which, staggers submittal timeframes for state agencies for plan approvals. All right, and moving on to page 5, related to planning concerns outlined by stakeholders, we suggest that school districts continue their local planning processes. If a submitted application is successful, the statute allows school districts to obtain a preliminary apportionment, reserving funding for up to 5 years, which provides the district confidence for that reserved bond authority specific for that district. We also note that the small school districts are not precluded from applying for new construction, modernization, or facility hardship funding at any time. And they can also request funds under these programs to the extent that they meet the requirements in advance of the proposed opening date for this new program. Okay, and then moving on to stakeholder comment number 2. This stakeholder expressed appreciation to allow all school districts to apply for program funds beginning on the same application filing date. Looking at stakeholder comment number 3, this stakeholder recommends extending the proposed application opening date in order to provide small school districts with time after the start of a new California Basic Educational Data System, or CBEDS for short, enrollment year to update new construction eligibility, meet with their governing board, and make informed decisions. So in tandem with the stakeholder comment with the number 1 above related to opening date feedback, OPSC is now proposing 2 separate start dates for program applications. First, to mitigate the concerns related to the start of a new CBEDS enrollment year, OPSC is proposing that for program applications requesting new construction funding, that the start date would be January 15th of 2027. This differs from our previous proposal. So second, for program applications requesting modernization funding, the start date would remain the previously proposed opening date of November 2nd, 2026. So the purpose for this change is to provide school districts additional time to calculate potential new construction eligibility and ultimately provide school districts time for evaluating, planning, and submitting a funding application. Okay, and looking at page number 6 for stakeholder comment number 4, this stakeholder sought clarification as to the process for prioritization if the program is oversubscribed. Following what we discussed in comment number 1, we acknowledge this concern and propose that program funding be prioritized in date order received of complete submittal packages for a Form SAB 5012 and the proposed regulations, specifically .157, has been updated to include the use of a lottery system to select the projects that would be funded in the event that there are more applications submitted on the same day than can be funded with available program authority. Okay, and then looking at comment number 5, this stakeholder recommends that previously submitted applications with the same scope of work as a program application should not be returned to the district until they receive confirmation that their program application is within bond authority for the program, thereby retaining their original application submittal date if set-aside funds for the program are exhausted prior to their application being funded. So we really appreciate this feedback, and as a result, on the proposed Form SAB 5012 and within regulation section .107, we've updated these to reflect that the first board action on an approved application that shares a common scope with another approved application will result in the return of the duplicate applications. Board action is the key term here. So this change allows for districts to apply for this program without having to withdraw their existing application from the SFP workload or applications received beyond bond authority lists until the time the board acts upon an approved application. All right, and finalizing our stakeholder feedback review today for number 6, this was regarding the previously proposed requirement to update new construction eligibility upon an application for a preliminary apportionment, rather than retaining any existing eligibility locks in place. So in consideration of this feedback, we have removed this requirement from proposed regulations and have amended regulation section .156A to allow any small school district with an eligibility lock in place to retain that. And so that being said, we would like to emphasize that if the lock period expires prior to the receipt, OPSC's receipt of the Form SAB 5004 to convert your preliminary apportionment, the district will be required to submit a Form SAB 5001 to update its new construction eligibility. If the required update results in a loss of eligibility compared to the eligibility at the time of the preliminary apportionment, the application will be reduced or may no longer be eligible for funding. So I kind of wanted to take a moment here to see if anyone had any questions before we move forward and look at the proposed regulations today.
Thanks, Casey. Yeah, we actually do have a couple of questions. The first one was already answered in the chat, but it was Rob Murray said, confirming if enough applications are submitted on day one to oversubscribe the program, then there would be a lottery for all applications submitted. And yes, that is correct. Let's see, the next one from Jeff Becker. Can you clarify the date order received comment? Are you taking the small school district applications already received into account? The answer, thank you for the question. The date order received will be in the order of receipt of a complete and valid Form 5012, the application for preliminary apportionment. The date of receipt of other applications, such as the 5004, that might be on the ARBA or workload list, do not have any bearing on the order of receipt. So yeah, it's open for anyone, whether you have an application on a list already or not. It's just open for whoever wants to apply as soon as the round opens. And then Ilana says, with regards to the dollar amounts on page 2, because the amount reserved will be based on construction funding, it would be helpful if you could highlight the design applications on the list as a reservation of funds for those projects, as they're not reflective of construction funds that will be reserved. Yeah, this has come up a few times lately. So when you look at the workload list or the applications received beyond bond authority list, the amounts that are listed for those are just as they were submitted in OPSC online. So if it's a design application, it reflects the design amount. We can see about perhaps notating which applications are designed and which are full funding. That's something we can discuss and we can work on it. Right now, though, the amounts that are reflected should be the design amount that would be awarded if the project is processed the way it was submitted. It's possible that someone entered it accidentally as a full funding app when it's really a design or vice versa, but I don't think that would happen too frequently. So the amounts that you're seeing there should reflect the amount that's being requested for that particular phase of the project. Okay, seeing no other questions at this time.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. All right, so we're going to go ahead and dive into the proposed regulations, which we can find on attachment A8B. So while going through them, I'll make sure to give a bit of room to breathe and check in between discussing these changes, as there have been a few since our last meeting. So let's go ahead and start on page 9 of this attachment here. We're going to take a look at regulation section .156A. So let's go ahead and get there. Thank you, Brian. Sorry, a lot of scrolling. Okay, great. Thank you. So as mentioned in response to stakeholder feedback, we've amended this section to eliminate the previously proposed requirement for program applicants to update new construction eligibility using the current enrollment year corresponding to the submittal date of the Form SAB 5012. So instead, the updates to this section require program applicants to use current new construction eligibility that is valid on the OPSC receipt date of Form SAB 5012, ensuring that small school districts can use the 5-year new construction eligibility lock provided for in regulation section .51J as the basis for new construction eligibility. So I'd like to take a moment here to kind of clarify the timeframes associated with the 5-year period, so that everyone has a solid understanding of when their lock will expire as it relates to when the Form SAB 5001 is submitted and subsequently approved by the board. So first, the enrollment year used for new construction eligibility purposes is based upon the Form SAB 5001 submittal date. However, this does not start the timeframe associated with the lock itself. What starts this 5-year period is the date of which the board approves the Form SAB 5001. The enrollment year captured within that 5001 is valid through the end of the enrollment year, which is October 31st, in which the 5-year period expires. So I kind of wanted to pause here just to see if there's any questions related to this process before I move forward into a couple examples of how this may impact program applicants, just to make sure. No questions.
Seeing none.
Okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead and Brian, I'm so sorry. If you wouldn't mind scrolling back to page 8 of the cover, we're going to take a look at a table with 2 illustrative scenarios of timeframes associated with new construction eligibility and participation in the program from preliminary apportionment to final apportionment. Great, thank you. So in this table, we have 2 scenarios, right? So in scenario 1, OPSC's receive date of a valid Form SAB 5001 is October 31st, 2024. Enrollment year thereby being 2023-24. So the board subsequently approves this 5001 at the January 22nd, 2025 board meeting. So the eligibility based on the 23-24 enrollment year is going to be valid through October 31st of 2030. So continuing with scenario 1, we receive a valid Form SAB 5012 from the district on January 15th, 2027. The district elects to maintain their existing eligibility lock using the 23-24 data upon submittal of this 5012. The board subsequently approves the 5012 at a May 26th, 2027 board meeting, in which the district now has 4 years to convert to a final apportionment, with a potential 1-year extension subject to board approval. So inclusive of the potential 1-year extension, there's a maximum deadline of May 26th, 2032. Then OPSC receives a valid 5004 from the district requesting a final apportionment on March 15th of 2031. Note that this date is after the 5-year lock period has expired on October 31st of 2030. So therefore, in scenario 1, the district must submit a 5001 to update its eligibility concurrently with the 5004 using the 2030-31 enrollment year data. Now, in scenario 2, district has the same starting lock of January 22nd, 2025, using the same enrollment year data of 2023-24. So upon OPSC receiving a valid 5012, the district opts to submit a 5001 to update their eligibility using 26-27 enrollment data, starting a new 5-year eligibility lock upon board approval. So following this, the district receives board approval of the 5012 and 5001. Omitted from this table is the board approval date of May 26, 2027 for the 5001, which would mean that the school district has a 5-year lock until October 31st, 2032. So the district has the same timeframe to convert from a preliminary to a final apportionment with a maximum deadline of May 26, 2032. So we receive a valid 5004 from this district on March 15th of 2031, which is before that 5-year eligibility period expires. Therefore, the request for final apportionment is processed with the current eligibility from the lock. So the significant difference between these 2 hypothetical scenarios is that in scenario 1, the school district did not have a valid eligibility at the time it converted to a final apportionment from a preliminary apportionment, and therefore it must submit a 5001 to demonstrate eligibility at the time of conversion. In scenario 2, the school district had valid eligibility at the time of conversion and therefore was able to proceed with the request for a final apportionment. So I'll go ahead and pause once again just to make sure there's no questions or comments related to this.
Thanks, Casey. Yeah, it sounds complicated. It really isn't. It's straightforward. The reason why we wanted you to see all these dates is just so you could kind of, just like Casey was explaining, just so you can kind of picture how it would work. Um, and we just want people to understand that if you do have a lock that's in place and you don't update your eligibility when you come in with your preliminary, there's a chance that you might have to update it before your final conversion. So that's really the main point we're trying to drive home. Rob Murray asks, could a district skip the 26-27 update if its eligibility will be less than the current lock, but then update in, for example, 28-29 to set a new lock if that year is beneficial? Just confirming it doesn't have to wait till processing. That's correct. You can send in an update. If you're a small school district, you don't have to send one in for 5 years, but you're able to send them in whenever they're a benefit to you to go ahead and lock them in for an additional 5 years beyond that. Okay, not seeing any other questions right now.
Great, sounds good. Brian, if you wouldn't mind going back down to the regulations on page 9 of attachment A8B, that would be great. Thank you. Okay. So going through the proposed regulations, we're going to kind of touch on the new proposed regulations for the small school district program first, and then we'll kind of go a little bit back toward proposed amendments to existing regulations afterward. So looking at .157 right here in the first few paragraphs, we've updated this to revise the date with which OPSC will begin accepting new construction applications for the program, which is proposed to begin on January 15th of 2027. No acceptance for modernization applications here remains November 2nd, 2026. And looking at the next page for sections .157.1 and .157.2, updates to subsection A for each section comprise of just explicitly stating the respective supplemental grants as it relates to the apportionments for new construction or modernization funding, respectively. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and go to page 11 of the proposed regulations to regulation section .157.3. And this here has been updated to provide clarifying language just regarding qualifications for an advance release of funds on a preliminary program apportionment, qualifications for financial hardship, and the amount of advance funds that may be released at the time of a preliminary program apportionment. Okay. And then on the next page for regulation section .157.4, this section has been updated with non-substantive clarifying changes. So previously proposed language regarding rescission of a preliminary program apportionment was removed because it was deemed unnecessary with existing proposed language in regulation section .157.5. Also here, subsection B has been added to ensure that a school district requests financial hardship on the Form SAB 5004 request for its final apportionment if it is seeking financial hardship assistance at the time of conversion. So in short, a district's qualification for financial hardship at the preliminary apportionment phase of funding will be reassessed when the district requests the final apportionment. On the same page here, looking at .157.5b, this has been updated to clarify that in the event the school district has not submitted a complete and valid request to convert a preliminary apportionment to a final apportionment within 4 years, or receive board approval for a 1-year extension for up to 5 years, then that apportionment shall be rescinded without further board action and returned to the fund source. So I'll go ahead and pause here again just to check and see if there are any questions related to those before we move forward.
Anybody got a question? Not seeing any.
Sounds good. Okay, great. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at page 13 for section .157.5 C3. Perfect. So this update here indicates that both new construction and modernization baseline eligibility adjustments may occur for funds reduced to costs incurred and closed out pursuant to section .106. So in the most recent presentation and proposal of regulations, the inclusion of modernization eligibility adjustments was erroneously admitted and is now included within the proposed regulation. Okay. And then on page 14 here for section .157.7 B3, this is proposed to align with the proposed project processing timelines discussed earlier in the stakeholder comments, wherein this section has been updated to clarify that in the event there are more applications submitted on the same date than can be funded with available program authority, proposed lottery system will determine the funding order of the applications. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at proposed changes to existing regulations. So Brian, if you wouldn't mind scrolling up to page 2 of the regulations, we're going to take a look at section .51E. Great. And this update here just notes that the 5001 must be complete and valid in accordance with the existing regulatory language pertaining to applications and to capitalized defined terms. So for .90.2 on page 5, thank you, is the okay, so this has been updated to add subsection C. So this subsection describes the requirements for participation in the priority funding process for a small school district to request an apportionment or an approved advance release of funds resulting from a preliminary apportionment. So non-substantive amendments are added to this section just primarily to capitalize defined terms. And then finally, on page 8, we have a few amendments to section .107. These are proposed to specify how OPSC will address circumstances when a school district submits more than one application for the same scope of work under one or more board-administered programs to OPSC. So as mentioned previously in response to stakeholder comment number 4, the goal is for OPSC to identify common scope during processing with the district's input. Then, when the first board action on an application occurs, OPSC will return all other applications containing the common scope of work to ensure that there is no duplicate funding. And these proposed amendments indicate that prior to the first board action, the school district may submit a written request, and this can be seen kind of at the tail end of the paragraph here, to modify the scope of work in other applications by clearly delineating the remaining eligible scope of work that is not duplicative. In addition, these updates clarify that school districts cannot add scope of work to other applications without withdrawal and subsequent resubmittal of those applications. So the intention of these updates is to clarify treatment of applications for small school districts that are already on the OPSC workload list or the applications received beyond bond authority lists if the district choose to submit an application for the same scope of work under the new program. These amendments would be applicable to other applications submitted for the same scope of work under one or more board-administered programs, such as applications that districts have submitted on or after October 31st of 2024 that duplicate the scope of work in applications on the OPSC workload list with an earlier submittal date. Okay. So with that being said, that is going to be the end of the proposed updates to the regulations. So I'll go ahead and check in one more time just to see if we have any questions or thoughts before I look at the 5012.
There is a question from Ilana. For financial hardship re-reviews prior to funds being apportioned, will the district be required to requalify, pardon me, will the district be required to requalify for financial hardship based on bonding capacity, or will the review only include additional available capital facility funds received? If a district's bonding capacity was less than 15 million when their design application was reviewed, and when the re-review happens, if it's 15.2, would they be eligible to proceed with financial hardship funding? Michael, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think at each phase, you'll be required to qualify for financial hardship. So if you fall out of financial hardship standing, uh, when you convert to a full apportionment, I think that portion of it would not be financial hardship.
Yeah, I believe that was our intent. And then the reverse is also true. If you're 15.2 before and didn't qualify, but when you convert, you are financial hardship, you can qualify for funding too. But yeah, if it's been more than 6 months since your financial hardship review, we would do a re-review.
Right. Not seeing any others. Okay. All right. So the last thing we'll touch on today to wrap it up is just going to be the proposed Form SAB 5012 and a couple updates pertaining to it. So given the stakeholder feedback we received and our proposed regulatory amendment to section .107, that last one we touched on pertaining to the submittal of one or more applications with the same scope of work. And on the 5012, the previously presented section 9, which was titled the return of the funding application, this has been removed due to these amendments. Again, this regulation specifies that if a school district submits more than one application for the same scope of work under one or more board administered programs, the first board action on one of the applications will result in the return of all other applications containing this common scope of work. All subsequent sections of the proposed application have been renumbered as a result of this change. And then on pages 9 and 10 of the 5012, the certifications component of the application have just been aligned to better align with the certifications currently included on the Form SAB 5004 and what is necessary at the stage of the 5012 submittal. All right, well, with that being said, that is the end of the materials presented within this item today. We really appreciate all the stakeholder engagement that we've received and will continue to receive in the development of this program, and really look forward to hearing from you. So thank you for your time. I'll go ahead and send it back to Brian to open the floor for any lingering questions or comments.
Thank you, Casey. Yeah, there's like I mentioned earlier, and like Casey said, there's a lot of nuance here. So, um, aside from what Casey outlined today, the rest of it is all sticking and seems to make sense. So we look forward to thank you for the questions we've received today. Looking forward to any feedback you might have, and based on the feedback we receive, we'll make the determination of whether or not we're going to have another stakeholder meeting on this topic. I feel like we're on pretty solid ground now. It looks like it's going to be a great program. We anticipate it being very popular, and so we're looking forward to getting out there next year and really fulfilling our education piece on this, and going out and seeing all of you in person, and maybe through some of the group meetings that we'll be doing. But we're really looking forward to getting this one off the ground and working. We think it's going to be a great program. Okay, seeing no other questions right now, I think we're going to go ahead and move on. If there's something that you think of in the meantime, we're happy to go back to it later. So please feel free to ask questions or raise your hand after the end of the next presentation. Even if you have questions on this, we'll be happy to go back and go over them. But I think I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey here, and I'm going to, I'm right there anyway. So we're ready to go whenever you are, Kelsey.
Thank you, Brian. All right, so hi, I'm Kelsey, and today we will continue our discussion on the evaluation of transitional kindergarten, TK, in current new construction enrollment projections. So our first stakeholder meeting was held on February 20th, where we presented 6 options for reporting TK enrollment on the Form SAB 5001. Then our second meeting was held on September 18th, and we focused on additional analysis for option 1, which adds a separate TK row on the Form SAB 5001 in Part A with an isolated linear projection calculation. Additionally, at this meeting, we introduced a proposed timeline for implementing option 1. And for reference, in the background section of this item on the second page, there are links to the full text and recording of the 2 meetings. All right, so for today's presentation, I will provide an overview of the proposed amendments to SFP regulations and forms to align with the addition of a TK row in Part A of the Form SAB 5001. So I will begin by reviewing OPSC's proposed amendments to the SFP regulations. So beginning on this page, you will find a summary of the proposed amendments to SFP regulation sections 1859.42 and 1859.42.1. Also in attachment B1B, which is page 55 of this entire packet, we can see the actual changes that we are making to the regulation section. So again, that's, Brian, if we could scroll to page 55 of the packet. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so at the top, we have updated, or we propose to update the definition of elementary school pupil, and we propose to replace kindergarten with transitional kindergarten. Also, we propose to add transitional kindergarten to the following reg sections, .42A1, .42B1H, and .421A1. All right, so we also propose a new regulation section, 1859.42.1b, to incorporate the new TK linear calculation, renaming the existing subsections B and C to C and D, respectively. So the new section is underlined here on the screen that Brian is showing. And then if we scroll down, subsection B is renamed to C, as well as subsection C is renamed to D. And please note that this, that the newly proposed regulation sections 1859.42.1b and C pertain to the birth rate augmentation. So additionally, OPSC proposes to replace the word kindergarten with transitional kindergarten in the following subsections of SFP regulation section 1859.42.1. And that is in D3, D7A, D7D, D7G. And lastly, for this reg packet, OPSC proposes to capitalize the defined term school district throughout SFP regulations 1859.42 and 1859.421 or .1. All right. So next, I will walk through OPSC's proposed amendments to the Form SAB 5001, and this is detailed in attachment B1C. And if you're following along in the PDF, it is page 60 of the entire packet. So in both the Form SAB 5001 specific instructions, as well as the form itself, references to K in K through 12, as well as K through 6 have been replaced with TK. OPSC also proposes splitting Part A of the Form SAB 5001 into 2 distinct sections. And this is outlined in the specific instructions as well as the form itself. And this is the purpose of this is to visually emphasize that TK enrollment projection does not impact the K through 12 enrollment projections. Also, a new section titled Part A1, TK pupil data, has been added directly above Part A2, K through 12 pupil data. And Part A1 includes only the TK row and uses an isolated linear projection. All right. Additionally, beyond the Form SAB 5001, OPSC proposes amending all relevant SFP regulations and program forms to include TK. So at the bottom of page 3 of this item, and it's page 44 of the entire packet, there is a list of proposed documents for revision. And please note that this list may not be comprehensive. Also, if we scroll down to page 4, which is page 45 of the entire packet, you'll find example screenshots of proposed changes to the Form SAB 5002, as well as the 5003 and 5004 on the next page. All right, and with that, that concludes my presentation of the evaluation of TK pupils in SFP new construction enrollment projections. And we appreciate you taking the time to listen to our proposals, and we'll now open the conversation for any feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelsey. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it's, really this is just, there wasn't any really new concepts that we were presenting today for this topic. It was just cleanup of our forms and regs. There's a lot of references, as we found, almost too many, that we went through and updated. So I think it's pretty straightforward, and I'm not seeing any questions right now. We will keep it open for just a minute here to see if anybody does have any questions about TK or back with the small school district program. Also, if there's anybody from our team that has anything they might want to add, please feel free to do so. But I think that about wraps up what we wanted to accomplish today. Again, the 19th meeting of the year, a lot of information, a lot of back and forth, and we're just very thankful for everybody that helped us to come to these conclusions we came to. And I think we're going to have a lot of really good rules, a lot of really good regs coming through, and we're all very excited to get everything off the ground here and going with all these new toys that we have to play with. So, okay, I'm seeing nothing else. Thank you, everybody, so much. I hope you have a happy holiday season and a happy new year. One more quick reminder, we have until 12/26 for feedback. If you can make it by that date, it'd be really appreciated. I know there's going to be a lot of people with time off, but the sooner you can get the feedback to us, the better, and we can keep these things moving. So appreciate the partnership. Have a happy holiday. Happy New Year, and we will be seeing you very soon. Thank you all.